Wow. What the hell's going on? Jobs come in at 227. Unemployment rate goes up. The average hourly earnings is now up. But swap traders are betting an 85% chance that the Federal Reserve is going to cut the interest rates. What more do they want? I mean, we do have a little bit of a mixed story right now, but the data that's come out regarding the jobs is effectively all to do with the strikes and, of course, the storms that have happened in the past that can actually have an impact on the jobs data, given that the unemployment claims is always released every single week, and they effectively it can be a bit challenging to understand where we are with it all. Again, it's got me all a little bit mixed up with it all. I'm looking at the NASDAQ and the S&P, and they're like, again, the CME engineer contacted me and said, Tino, the sell button still does not work on the NASDAQ and the S&P. So it's the bull run, isn't it? Is it the bull run or is it BS? Who knows? But ultimately, paying attention to what's going on through other assets is going to give us a better picture of what we are effectively going into. Now, the title, BlackRock dumps 52,000 ETF. One gentleman was like, this is bad news, Tino. It's negative. They're all going into Ethereum. But when you actually look at the math, it was actually $830 million worth of Bitcoin that was offloaded by BlackRock. 333 million goes into the Ethereum ETF over the last 2 days. So that leaves us with around 500 million just floating, doing nothing. What I'm saying to you is BlackRock mentality, Wall Street mentality. Whenever you see prices of crypto, because we're so used to crypto going up and we don't have the fear of Wall Street offloading on us. This is an example of it. So when I say take some profits, do something about it, it's because of these sort of circumstances. So let's just get with the program, ladies and gentlemen. It's Friday then. Yeah, it's all excitable and what have you. But let's break down how the market is going to react to it, because we've got another 25 minutes until the initial futures markets open. And having a look at what's going on across the board, we can see that NASDAQ has made a nice little sweep again for another all-time high. Bitcoin, is it going to be stuck in this range right now, still at that 98 region? Well, let's break it all down, guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good. This time it's different. BlackRock did practice run for when they do a mega pump. Okay, that's good. Okay, I get that. Did anyone hit the like button? Yes, that is the question. Do that afterwards, guys. Let's get some flavor first. So, jobs boost bets on December Fed cut. Now, when we go into the data that's coming out, you can see, here we go. Well, it's already out. The unemployment rate for Canada is currently at 6.8%. It has increased, okay? Now, average hourly earnings come in at 0.4%. Problem is companies are now paying people more money to retain them, okay, which can effectively lead to inflation. Now, the more people that are in jobs, the more chances that inflation has at increasing. With that being said, going into next week's data, we have a projection of 2.7% year-on-year inflation reading. So that makes sense when Muslim said one of the Fed speakers, they said that they're going to look to try and get inflation down to its 2% target within 2 years. What do you mean within 2 years, man? And I said this last night. 2 years? So they obviously have an idea that potentially maybe interest rates are going to be high for quite some time. Now, we'll get the Fed cut at 25 basis points. Beyond 4%, I don't think we're going to go anywhere. And that makes sense when Ray Dalio had put out there that the Federal Reserve is probably unlikely going to go beyond 4% if inflation continuously persists at being sticky. But the only thing that's going to impact inflation is the amount of people that are in work. So non-farm payrolls comes in and shows you that we've got quite a few people in work. At the same token, these figures could be inflated only because of the strikes and, of course, the storms. Now we've got an unemployment reading of 4.2%. If you go to the start of the week, that reading was already at 4.2%. It adjusted halfway through the week to 4.1%. Now it's sat at 4.2%. Is it enough of a reading to get the Fed to be concerned about the economy? Nope. It really isn't. It's not that much in terms of getting the Fed to really grant the idea of cutting the interest rates aggressively. So with that being said, we go over to the charts to have a look at what's going on across the board. We can see the euro has made an interesting stop run to the upside to only come back down again, and that's on the news announcements. Going over into the dollar dominance, we can see dollar makes a sweep lower to only come back up again, so we're stuck in a range. We go over to the volatility index, and we can see the VIX is actually trading lower on the back of the NASDAQ and the S&P saying, yep, let's make a move to the upside kind of story, okay? Now, going over to the bonds market, the bonds are trading very well. This is good news, okay? And we've got the yields coming down. Look at that spike on the yields to only work its way back down again. Be very mindful because the yields will naturally climb back up again because investors are now going to offload on the bonds to effectively generate a potential to get the yield higher, okay? So be careful with these big spikes to the downside on the yield because they most of the time recover the majority of them. So if you go back and study the yields, okay, you can see that every wick that you see, they're going to come back up and recover that bad boy, okay? Now, remember, the yields are contracts, okay? If you go and pull up the depth of market on the yields, you'll see they are physical contracts that are traded, okay? Now, with that being said, going over to the Japanese yen. So the yen's doing some interesting behavior, spikes up again. And we've got the yen announcement coming out in the next couple of weeks or so, not a couple of weeks, but in the 19th of December, shortly after the FOMC. So we're going to probably see the yen trading sideways alongside with gold as well. Gold is just trading very treacherously in those charts right now. So we've got to be very careful with what's going on with everything across the board. Flipping it over to the good old BTC flavor that we've got going off here. Got this massive wick that's coming into action with Bitcoin, which question is it going to recover it? What's it going to do? We got any vectors above? Yeah, we got vectors all the way at 104 again, 103,420. And then we've got the idea of the options expiry coming into play. Now, in all honesty, it says here that Bitcoin needs to effectively stay above 97,000. Okay, but it does say here Bitcoin contracts. So it says here $2.87 billion worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum options are expiring today with the trigger, which will trigger substantial market volatility. It says 23,481 Bitcoin contracts worth 2.29 billion expiring with a bearish sentiment indicated by a put call ratio of 1.11 and a max pain of 97,000. On the other side of Ethereum, they're valued at 581 million that are expiring with a general bullish outlook reflected by a put call ratio of 0.63. Maybe this could be a clue that altcoin season could be on the cards based on the way investors are betting that Ethereum's going to rise and Bitcoin is going to fall. Ethereum effectively needs to stay above 3,300 to really make it profitable for traders who are in options for Ethereum. Now, going into the options market per se, we don't really have anything going on right now because the markets are not open. But if we just go over and have a look at the unusual trades that are coming into play, we've got a lot of sell puts, sell calls coming into action on Apple. All right, so there's lots happening on Apple, quite a significant amount, 2.6 million, 2 million, 2.7, 2.03, and 2.6 million. So there's a lot of selling on Apple with the expectation of it coming down. Going down, I'm not really seeing anything that is grabbing my attention. We've got some SPY contracts at 1.4 million right there. I'm not seeing MicroStrategy coming in at all. QCOM's coming in as well, down. Nothing that's grabbing my attention just yet. But again, the market's not even fully open for that to be the case. Now, just to have a quick look at something, here we go. So, courtesy of Bryony, mad love and respect. Question is, do you have a minute to talk about our savior XRP? Yes, I do. So let's go and have a look at XRP. This guy, man, he pulls out the flavor with these thumbnails. All right, let's go and have a look at XRP. Currently stalling at the $2.28 region itself. Now, a lot of people are asking the question, what's going on with XRP? They have stalled on the delay of the Ripple stablecoin release, maybe because the SEC is trying to try and cause a bit of a problem. But we got some new heads in the SEC right now, which should be really saying, don't worry about it. Just let it be. Okay, don't worry. But you know, everyone seems to be cussing at XRP. It's a rug pull. It's all this and that. But you know what? Just you do you. All right. You don't need to worry about whether it's a rug pull or not. Okay. But in other news, we've got this right here. I've seen a lot of people coming out to Coinbase complaining about restrictions, okay? And it's got people a little bit concerned. Going over to X says here, Coinbase from Cointelegraph says Coinbase user report account restrictions and inaccessible funds fueling concerns over customer service and security as legal scrutiny mounts. I mean, look, man, Coinbase, how are you actually getting through? How are you doing this? What is the story? You are at the forefront of cryptocurrency. You're listed on the US stock market. There are regulators on your ass continuously. And this is happening? Well, it just, you know, not your keys, not your coin. It really is like that, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so just take that into consideration when you are looking at getting crypto. Now, let's get into the trading aspect of everything. So if you're here to understand the price action, we'll get to that in a few seconds. 112 million liquidations hit in just an hour. I mean, please, I am hoping that none of you experienced any of that pain, you know, because it's kind of sad if you did. All right. So lots of liquidations have come into action, going over into the liquidations chart as well. Look at that. You've got a massive amount of long liquidations coming into play, and we've yet to see really any short sellers paying the price. Usually what happens when you see price action do these sweeps to the downside, they're usually just a front run on picking up contracts, getting bids triggered. We saw those bids. Do you remember that bid at 89,900? Well, he's going to be pretty cheesed off because he didn't get filled. But I want to know if it's still currently at that point, 89,900. Let me just quickly bring this up. 12,490 traders were liquidated. Here we go, 89,900. There it is. $45 million worth of Bitcoin bid at 89,900. Okay. And I've said this to you before, right? When you're looking at the liquidations, right? It's all to do with open interest, coming on, coming off, who's putting leverage on. But as we look at the bigger picture of things, it looks like the bull running principle is going to be sustained. And I've said this before, Bitcoin can actually, on the daily time frame, it can correct as much as all the way down to 80,000 for it to be still a consistent bull run. The sooner they correct, okay, the stronger the move is going to be, or the implications of the move to the upside, okay, because they're loading up on Bitcoin. Now, if we just go over to what we're talking about, Blackrock, look at that, 447,000 on the ETF. That was at 500 yesterday, all right? So they've offloaded $830 million worth of this ETF, and it's absolutely mad because we all saw it yesterday prior to Bitcoin's rally to the upside of 100K, right? They managed to get it up to 500,000, and now they've just offloaded it. And look at this, look at the pricing of it, 500,000 down to 447,000. That just tells you, okay, what Wall Street is doing with crypto, all right? Which then says to me overall, when I look at the chart, see that we've got this big stopping volume candle with a wave to the upside, wave to the downside. A lot of people are anticipating Bitcoin's going to clear out the 110 region. Again, like I've said to you before, okay? The 5 and 13 EMA, this daily candle, this is for the holders, right? This daily candle right here is going to confirm today if they do mean business about making sure Bitcoin stays in this range and continues higher. Holders, you need to wait for this candlestick to close tonight. And you might be like, oh, but I want to know now. Well, Bitcoin's not going to close this candlestick right now. All right. And you've got to get that in your minds. You want to know if they're going to be sustaining the logic of continuing higher. Wait for this candlestick to close. If this candlestick closes higher, then the logic says that the next day's candle will just continue and recover this wick. Having a look at NASDAQ, still behaving itself, keeping things to the upside right there. So yeah, that's what you've got to take into consideration. Naturally, there is going to be an instance when we are going to be expecting them to try and take out this wick. There's a lot of liquidity down here. A lot of traders are trapped inside of these zones. If I pull up EXO Charts for a split second to help you understand the logic of order flow, if I just go into Bitcoin over here, that should bring it into perspective. So here we are on the daily time frame of the order flow. So what you're seeing here is Bitcoin is currently sat at the value area high for the day's range, okay? And what we've got is 3,000. It's very, very light on volume. And this is something you got to take into consideration going into the back end of this year, guys. Volume is relatively light, okay? So that's why you're probably going to get these wild price swings and what have you. And the market will be opening in 15 minutes to really give us the truth about what they feel about this non-farm payroll result. But looking at Bitcoin and looking at the offers, you can see that there's nothing much happening. You've got a couple of guys trying to plant some sell orders up here around 98,970, but nothing too aggressive. I mean, look at this. This is an algorithm working right now. For every time price gets closer and closer towards a certain point, that algorithm gets triggered to take the order, put the order, take the order, put the order, okay? And what I look for when I'm looking at the depth of market is I'm looking for consistent orders that are not moving. For example, you see this 108 up here, that's stuck at the 99,090, all right? If it starts to change in terms of value, I know that there is an algorithm at play trying to add orders, take away. Right now, it's just taken away 10 orders off that, but it's gone straight back to that order amount, okay? Those are little subtle clues about who's potentially in the book, okay? And that's what you want to try and focus on. Try and pay attention to who's in the book, wanting to commit to sell, and who is committed to buy. You got someone down here at 246 Bitcoin contracts, all right? That's a lot of Bitcoin right there. So that means that there's commitment to buy at 98,290. That means if price does or was to come back down, you would look at this and say, okay, I would expect interest to come into play at this point. Now it's increasing to 319, 320, 310. So when you see these fluctuations, but it stays at a relatively normal figure that you're seeing, like 320, that tells you that that player right there is trying to make sure that he's going to get a good fill of a certain amount of contracts if price does hit that point, okay? So we know it's been static at around the 260 mark. Now it's at 298. So we really want to pay attention to 98,290 because then that could be a point of interest for us in Bitcoin. Say if you're a day trader, we look at that 98,250 and then that will put us inside of the vector candle recovery region, thereabouts, 250 right there. Okay. So we know that someone wants to bid from that point, which effectively tells me that if the market's memory is going to trigger Bitcoin to make a move up or down, I need to look at the ranges and say to myself, well, what has Bitcoin actually done? Is this move just an attack on the liquidation points? Because if it is, and there's commitment down there, they're going to want to go back to those points at some stage. All right. Alternatively, if the NASDAQ and the S&P don't go anywhere today and they just keep their gains in the chart, then you know for sure that they're waiting for the FOMC meeting. You've got CPI data, then you've got the FOMC meeting coming, all right? If they're going to make any real big moves, technically today should be one of those days that really solidifies that. But looking at the way they're behaving, I don't think they're going to do it. I really don't. I look at NVIDIA as well, and NVIDIA's just consolidating. They're just creating this price action. You've got a gap down on NVIDIA, which they may actually try and close that gap going into today. But I haven't looked at the order flow on NVIDIA to really say to myself, okay, yeah, we're looking for NVIDIA to go up or down per se. But I'm looking for NVIDIA to go for its all-time high yet again. Going into dollar yen has taken a nosedive to the downside, but looking at that, it might actually try and make a little bit of recovery back up in the charts, which could have a little bit of a problem for Bitcoin if the dollar dominance does decide to continue its narrative to the upside. It is moving pretty aggressively as well, and it tells me that the yen is moving down. So we just got to be careful. We want the yen to move down and the dollar to effectively move up, and then people put their money in dollars to go and exchange it into and buy stocks, which will then naturally lead the NASDAQ to move up. That will naturally lead Bitcoin to move up, okay? But if this wall of Bitcoin at the 100K, I mean, how many of you are on the belief that Bitcoin is realistically, Bitcoin's going to be stuck now below the 104 region? How many of you are of the impression that Bitcoin is going to clear the 104 zone again? Because in my opinion, guys, this drop to the downside could be a little bit of a clue of what's to come. I mean, you've got to welcome that Bitcoin can get a little bit cheaper, and it hasn't corrected like this for, I mean, the last time they did this sort of behavior, Bitcoin shot up, and that was when the ETFs, this was before the ETFs, Bitcoin shot up from these sort of ranges. We actually just go back and look at Bitcoin at that point in time, all right? When was the ETF? ETF was the 12th of January. So let's just go to the ETF at 12th of January. Here we go. So this was the behavior right here. So the 3rd of January, all right, they did this sort of behavior. Stop run to the downside. Everyone was pumped up, Bitcoin moving up. Then they shifted to the upside like that, okay? Another instance when they did that, where was it? Here we go. This was in March. Stop run to the downside. Then they continued with the narrative back up, okay? So this could potentially be something like that. We could actually see that happen. Now, this might be a little bit longer. It's going to take a little while for that to happen, but it all depends on what they decide to do once the market opens in the next 20 minutes, next 10 minutes. Okay. So let's have a look at what you guys are saying. I expect a range for price action for what? It won't go to 100K. All right, here we go. So it will not go to 100K. Dude, man, it's there. You know, I beg to differ. Shorts will get wrecked. Targeting 113K, in my opinion. What about the green vector candle at 80K and some instances? Will we attack it? Of course we will. We will attack that range at 80. We genuinely will. Why? Because this was the longest form of consolidation on Bitcoin. This was the longest amount of time Bitcoin has ever spent consolidating so close to its all-time high in its history. Okay? So naturally, price would want to come back down to there. And the reason why I say that is because the speed of this move to the upside can be granted to a much faster move back down. So they can move down as aggressively back into that range, pick up some orders to move back into it again. Remember, there's nothing wrong in Bitcoin getting cheaper for you. The higher Bitcoin goes, the less reluctant people are going to be to try and get involved in it. And it'll get to a point when Bitcoin gets so expensive that retail is going to be like, nope, I'm not even getting anything worth holding as such. Okay. Now, those guys that are paying for Bitcoin at 110, 120, I mean, damn, it only naturally leads you to two options. You've got the MicroStrategy play or you've got the ETF play. That's why the ETF is fluctuating so much, because you don't need that much of a move. Where is it? I mean, the ETF right now, let's have a look where we are. Okay, so it's not really gapping up or down at the open, okay? But the ETF narrowly misses our projection of $60. But you can hold more ETF than Bitcoin. If you were to commit one Bitcoin and pay $100,000 and put that into the ETF, look how many contracts you're getting of the ETF. So how much of a percentage do you actually need to see the ETF make for you to actually make a decent return? Well, you need Bitcoin from the current price point of 100K, for example, to go to 200K for you to double your money. Well, if I'm putting 100K into the ETF, how much of a percentage do I need to see the ETF move for me to make at least 5, 6 grand, 10 grand, even 20 grand? You'd need Bitcoin to make a big, bold move. And a big, bold move on Bitcoin would be, for me, at least a 5 to 10% move. You know, that would be a very big move on Bitcoin. But imagine you've got all that ETF and you can just dump that all the time, you know? And that's what I think people should be doing. But then again, you've got the idea of, oh, I'm not holding no ETF. I'm holding for Bitcoin. I'm all about the BTC. I get it. Again, are you a collector? If you're a collector, it doesn't matter what anyone says about Bitcoin's price. As long as you are alive, you will be in the game of Bitcoin and hold it until your dying days, where you'll then look at the price and be like, I remember when it was 150K. You know, now it's at like 3 million, like whatever, for jokes and whatever, what have you. You know, but that's what you got to really think about. If you are in this game to make money, you make it cheap by going into the ETF. If you're just down for holding crypto because you want it to be as a mantelpiece in your wallet and be like, look, man, I have a Bitcoin and all that. Doesn't matter what price Bitcoin is. Okay. Doesn't matter. You're just playing the game of Pokemon. You're collecting. That's all you're doing. You know, and that's my opinion. Like, if you're in it to make money, I would play the ETF. Okay. And then you've got problem with the ETF is if Bitcoin drops down in the Asian session, the ETF is going to be subject to a gap down. So you're going to be seeing those fluctuations. But if you're already used to the way cryptocurrency behaves, then these moves up and down ain't nothing for you. Questions. Whilst I'm looking at your questions, okay, then, oh, here we go. Right. Whilst I'm looking at your questions, be sure to like and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to read this comment. Price is not going down there. It's like the people who said we're going back to the 30s. Tino is wrong. Tino is wrong. Okay. So you must be right. So my friend, please tell me, what's your price projection of Bitcoin? I really want to know. Because the problem you'll have is someone will then say you're wrong. Someone will say that they're right. Someone will say I'm wrong. Do you really care when you're making money? You don't. You really don't care if you're making money in this game. What do you care about Bitcoin's price for? All right, I get it mathematically with your DCAs and how much are you making, losing, and what have you. I get all of that. That's when price is relevant. You know, you can't say I'm going to buy Bitcoin at 100,000 and then it slumps down to 19,000. And then you're like, I don't care about the Bitcoin price. I can see my portfolio is dead, but don't worry about the Bitcoin price. Nah, that's when you think about price. But projecting what it could go to, we have no idea. I gave a projection on 104, hit it, and then reversed. But that's because I'm looking at it from the order flow perspective. I'm looking and based on the way Bitcoin behaves at all-time highs. Who's wrong? Who's right? But if I can give you something that can make money from it, we're laughing, bro. You know, that's how I see it. Is the unemployment rate... Okay, is the unemployment rate... Will it make a huge difference on the market? No. It doesn't, because it's not at any point for the Fed to even care about it. That's the thing. It's not at a point for the Fed to care. What else we got? I want it to drop to 18. It matters because bull market is way better for your mentality. You can't be coming into the game with that mentality. Don't care about the price. So long I'm in the trade of the trend. Happy days. There you go. Tell us about a push-up from the vectors. 5 minute, 15 minutes. I saw a vid about that you were talking about. I don't get it. Sorry for the question. It's not. Don't apologize. Vectors 5 minute or 15 minute. The first, well, basically, it's the first 5 minute, first candle that appears above the 50 EMA on the 5 minute time frame. Okay, it's the first green vector candle. When you see that, the logic says that we're looking for price to go higher because it's coming from a move to the downside, and then you're looking for it to come up. Principally, it's one of these ones where it's drop, retrace, consolidate, first vector inside of the 50 EMA, bang, rise, retrace, continuation out. That's what you're looking at. What a guy. Okay, so the market has yet to open. Got 2 more minutes until the open. This is going to be very interesting because I'm going to look up the order flow to see if anyone's going to burp any orders into Bitcoin. Here we go. We should see some activity happening right now. Green vector candle right there. It's not above the 50 EMA, so that's a bit of a problem for me. What time is it? Yep, going to be making that move. Here we go. Tino, what if unemployment rate was higher by 1% rather than 0.1? The same NFP reading came out. Great question. If it was above 1% and we went to 5, that would make the Fed move. He said even if it moves up like 0.1%, they're not really interested in it because it's not moving to a significant amount. All right. Look at the data. It's mixed. Average hourly earnings are up. We've got more jobs available, but the data is inflamed. It's inflated because of the strikes and the storms. Okay. Then you've got unemployment rate going to 4.2. It's not going anywhere that they've not seen before, and they're not too concerned about it. But the problem is the less likely the employment market shows a contraction, the greater chance that inflation is going to go up. And that's when the Fed really needs to step in and say, okay, we need to cut interest rates. Because if the labor market is still strong and then they do cut interest rates again, inflation is just going to keep moving up again. And then the Fed's going to be back in that situation where they're like, do we hold or do we increase? God forbid they increase. God forbid. If you were to getting into crypto now, what would be your strategy? Great question. Well, looking at Bitcoin, I wouldn't be buying any Bitcoin right now. I'd be looking for very significant drops to the downside. If I was on the belief that the price of Bitcoin was going to continue higher, I'd be looking for a significant move to the downside. More so, let's make the assumption that that was the case with this big move that we've just experienced. There will be a little bit of a drawdown because Bitcoin could actually come down lower. Remember, we've been going up non-stop. However, what you've got to take into consideration is if you're going to plow all your liquidity into it, you're not going to stand like 5 minutes, all right? And you're going to be exactly the same place where people were when Bitcoin made the last high at 67, okay? So what you've got to do is you've got to split your capital. Split it into working capital. You got 10 grand, split that into 3 transactions of 20%. So that's 2 grand, 2 grand, 2 grand. For every time you see Bitcoin take a drop, invest 20%. Then when you see it drop again, invest another 20%. And you see it drop again, invest another 20%. That's the 420 method. All right. And then as you see Bitcoin trying to climb back up again, and you're making a little bit of return on those 3 purchases, take some of that money out and play the game again. Because if you can promise me that Bitcoin will never go down, then we'll all be buying it and Bitcoin is not a problem and it will keep on going up. But you can't promise me that it will never go down. So you can't tell me that it won't go to a point that in the future. You can't. Because Bitcoin can go up and it can go down. People that are fixated on Bitcoin just going up, you are biased to the nines. You're the maxes and there's nothing wrong with that. But we want to bring a little bit of reality into it all. Okay? That's all I try and do with these live streams, just to make you think maybe it could pull back. But people have got parabolic in their brain. Anyways. Tino, what would it take for XRP to return to the 50-cent range? Nothing. It's going back to that range. What are you talking about, man? What kind of question is that? We know it's going there. So you said something about the Australian dollar before. What about now? What are the effects in terms of the carry trade? Yeah, the Aussie yen. The Aussie yen principle itself is currently it's going down. Okay, so when Aussie yen is going down, they're going back into dollars because the dollar is going up. Ish. This could be accumulation. They're selling your Aussie yen and yen is going up. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. If yen's going up, euro. Sideways. Yen is moving up by itself quite aggressively. Bonds, yields going down on the Japanese yen. 10-year bonds and the yen are going up. Is the bonds market going up? Yeah, bonds are moving up. Okay. That is interesting. They're trying to get in some yields right now because they think that the yields are going to keep going down. All right? Cool. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, going into the weekend, mad love and respect. Please subscribe, like on the way out. And if you don't, never mind. I will see you on Monday. All right? Trade safely and don't give anything to the market makers. All right? Keep it for yourselves. Enjoy your weekend and I'll see you soon. Peace. Stop flipping, winking, man.